Good evening, everyone, here for another episode of College Blitz. I'm Russ Morgan here with my other co host, Q, from I Hate Football podcast. Thursday episode, Q, how we doing?
What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm doing good. I had a really surprise. Did my on deck on Sunday it was a great show. But I was surprised because I had a lot of people come out and support. Q was on there, AJ, Will, any was it NFE from the strike zone came out.
Wow.
So I mean that was great because we were talking draft, but it was good just talking baseball with everybody. I went in thinking like maybe I got one guy coming on for 5-10 minutes, and you guys stayed for a good 30 to 45. So I was pleasantly very surprised that I got the support, and I was really happy you made it on, and AJ and Will and NFE. But I'm doing good, getting ramped up, ready for college football to start here.
Yeah, man. The baseball podcast was cool, man. It's like we talked about, not my norm necessarily, but man, it was a great time, man. It was good conversation, good insight. Definitely got some good perspective from you from the panel. When you talk about sometimes 5 people, right? You talk about
Will, how's it going, man?
There you go, Will. What's up, buddy? You talk about 5 people being involved. One of them being Will, and sometimes the conversation, people can start to talk over one another, and it doesn't always flow, but man, I think that thing flowed perfectly. I think the insight was great, man. Like I said, a lot of different.
Going in, obviously I'm not used to 5 people. I'm used to like maybe 2 or 3, and then obviously as you probably know, you're your biggest critic.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. So like I always criticize myself. I'll be like, hey, I text Bobby. I was like, that was crap, and he's like, dude, it was really good. I'm like, no shit. That one now I'm like, fuck, I should have. Excuse my language. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Why in the hell did I do? Why didn't I do that? I should have done this? It was like 5 people is a little overwhelming, but going in, I was like, all right, I knew I'm gonna have to like divert a little bit with you guys from the draft talk. Cause I mean, I get it. It's not like an NFL draft talk where it's highly, visible on ESPN, but it was good to get, just to get on there. And the people, I was like, hey, we're just gonna talk baseball at the end of the day. I'll do the draft talk. At the end of the day, just talk some baseball, and like you saw, we were just talking food there for a while.
Of course, man. Yeah, it was a good time, man. Like I said, a lot of good insight, a lot of good angles being played. You had the different vantage points from different teams and organizations and stuff like that. Obviously, you got some Yankees fans. We have some a Marlins fan or a couple Marlins fans. I know AJ's one, and I believe he is, right? I think AJ's a Marlins fan, and so some different views and ideas, man. But I think at the end of the day, man, it made for, at least while I was on and what I watched and listened to, I think it made for a great time, and made for pretty smooth transitions, from one person to the other.
Positive reviews. People were, I don't know, this guy JB, Back It Up. I think it's Back It Up Binge podcast. And he's like, geez, you got Will, you got all these FTS guys. Mm-hmm. I was like, they all just kind of like, was like, sure, I'll come in and help out. I'm like, that was a good get. I'm like, it was, I was like, that was good. It was good conversation. I'm like, sometimes, I mean, like, I was like, one time I was like, oh, I got to say this. I'm like, I mentioned it, but you can't really, like, if we got a good topic going, you can't just like cut it off and be like, hey, this topic's rolling.
You keep it moving, keep it flowing, and wherever it goes, it goes.
But we got college football right around the corner. I'm stoked because we're ready to talk about something.
Man.
University of Miami.
There's no Miami talk tonight, at least for now. There's no Miami talk tonight. Me and Will, we're getting together later. We got a little something cooking up for later on. But for now, man, we transition, like my boy Russ said, we transition to college football from baseball, right? And these are the kind of dog days of sports coverage, really, man. There's not a lot.
The baseball fan is dog days.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on.
July and September in baseball is definitely dog days. I'm like, it's getting a little too much. So it's definitely the dog days of sports right now.
100%, man. But I was thinking the other day, and I kind of reached out to my boy Russ, and I was like, "Hey, man, got an idea. Want to do a little 5-part series, talk about some of the contenders in college football, and do a little bit different angle, do a little bit different presentation in terms of speaking about these teams, and really talk about what could possibly keep them from contending, right? Hence the name, right? And so." We won't tell you who the other 4 teams are, but part 1 today is going to be Georgia, right? And for me, it was a really obvious, choice, living, in the Metro Atlanta area and being, kind of right up the road really from Georgia and knowing so many Georgia fans and, they're ready to go, right? I mean, these guys are good every year, right? I mean, there's not a whole bunch to be to be concerned about typically for a team like Georgia, right? But when you look at this year, when you look at
Yeah,
what happened last year, I think it's worth breaking some things down, man.
I think I'm with you. I think there's some holes now. Now, I do think this will be the year we see what type of coach Kirby Smart is, because I think this is going to be his biggest obstacle as maybe like his biggest obstacle as a coach since he's been. So since he got to Georgia, I think this will definitely be his not make or break year, but what type of coach is Kirby Smart? Because I think this is the most raw team that
Yeah,
we'll see at
I,
Georgia.
I think there's definitely something to be said for a new type of challenge that Kirby's going to deal with this year, right? Outside of taking the job in 2015 after the 2015 season, his first full season was 2016. I don't know that me personally, and the comments may push back on it, and I may be missing something, right? Somebody may disagree, or a couple people may disagree, but to me, I think this is one of those years that in the last, I can't even tell you how long, right? That you look at a team like this, and really, I could look at some things and say, man, this could be a 3 or 4 loss team, right? And listen, like we talked about, let's before we get into the what's not perfect, right, and some stuff that have working against them, start with the very obvious, right? Because as a Georgia fan, like I've talked with with a lot of Georgia fans, right? There's not a lot to complain about, right? Listen, let's start with this week, for example, right? Start with the fact that they just lost the number 1 defensive lineman in the country, James Johnson, who committed to them a couple weeks ago. He just flipped to Texas. All right, number 1 defensive lineman in the country, flipped from Georgia to Texas, right? Fast forward now a couple days ago, the number 1 linebacker in the country, a kid named Tyler Atkinson, plays at Grayson High School here in Loganville, Georgia. He committed to Texas also, right? Picked them over Georgia, picked them over Oregon, picked them over Clemson, right? And so, talk to some fans and some guys that follow him pretty closely, season ticket holders, that kind of thing. And there's mixed reviews. But I think at the end of the day, right, you take solace in the fact that you look at the recruiting rankings, Georgia's number 2 behind USC, right? And this is a team that, because they are essentially just a recruiting juggernaut, right? There's a few teams in the country that pick and choose and the rest recruit. And I'm a firm believer in that, right? And Georgia is one of them, right? Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon. I think those 4 right now would kind of put in the they pick and choose, everybody else recruits. I would put them in that they pick and choose tier, that top tier. All right, you can make an argument for maybe a couple other teams, right? But I think for me, those 4 would be the top tier in terms of recruiting, right? So, to me, it's not the same thing as different teams, right? As a Miami fan, for example, the last few weeks have been a little bit stressful in terms of who they haven't landed, right? Georgia doesn't worry about who they don't land, right? Because whoever they don't land, they're gonna fill that space with another high end 4-star, possibly a 5-star. So those guys don't really have a whole bunch to worry about. When you look at what Kirby Smart has done since he's been there, they've known nothing but success, right? He got there in 2016. you look at 11-3 last year, won the SEC, right? Made it to the quarterfinal of the college football playoff. His record, in his ninth year, right? 105 and 19, 62 and 11 record in conference play, right? That's at the SEC. That's year in and year out. The only conference that can really boast being on the same level is the Big Ten, and that's in the last couple of years, year in and year out. The SEC, as we all know, toughest conference to play, in the country, right? So not a lot to worry about, to complain about for a really long time if you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan.
Oh yeah, I mean the recruiting ranks. Yeah, I mean I'm with you on that. And we almost made it 10 minutes without hearing about Miami, but Q made it at 9:57 out of Miami. So but I mean.
It was context. It was context to show the difference in in worries.
I had to bring it up. I mean, they lose out on those guys, but you're still gonna probably you still have 5 stars on there. I'm like, oh, he's not the number 1, but hey, we got the number 5 coming in, type of thing. So it's not like the end of the world for a program like Georgia or an Alabama or something like that, because it's a factory. That's what it is. So I mean,
and speaking of the factory, let's review real quick on why Georgia fans don't have to worry about losing anybody before signing date. Doesn't matter. Let me tell you what their rankings are since 2018. You ready for this? 2018, number 1 class. 2019, number 1 class. 2020, number 1 class. 2021 fell off a little bit, the number 5 class. 24, number 1, right? God forbid. 24, number 1 class. Last year in 25, the number 2 class. And this year, they're number 2 in the composite. And this is, again, after just losing the number one defensive lineman in the country, right? So there again, right? Death taxes, Kirby Smart recruiting at Georgia. It's that simple. There's nothing to worry about, when it comes to recruiting. There's not much really to worry about, across the board, right? But when you sit there and listen, and I've listened to some podcasts recently, and some of the stuff these guys are talking about, again, kind of fits with what it is we're discussing here today, right? And you're hearing some of the websites talking about where they're going to finish and what they're going to do, in terms of offense, and a lot of the websites and stuff, popular websites and Twitter handles and the whole deal, they're picking this offense to be middle of the pack, right? And we start with what I think is a very obvious first place to start, and you look at the schedule, right? And
I'm with you on that. I think at Georgia, even though I think it's an easy pick to say, offense middle of the pack, but they're going to be right there. I think that's kind of the gimme easy kind of backing out of it, right? But yeah, I'm with you. Look at that schedule. I mean, Tennessee, you play Tennessee, still be tough. You play Alabama. I mean, the one positive I'll say for Georgia's sake this year, even though it's a really tough schedule, as minus they did last year, is they play all those tough games in Athens, as opposed to last year. A lot of those tough games were on the road. I mean, you got Bama at home. You obviously got the neutral site game against Florida. You got Texas at home. That's the only positive I see. But I mean,
yeah, the schedule sets up interesting. First of all, it's tough, not unlike a lot of other SEC teams, right? Florida being, one of those teams, they're playing a really tough schedule. But when you look at in order, right, you talked about the toughest games being, at Sanford Stadium in Athens, but you go in order, right? September 13th at Tennessee. Listen, I know Nico Yamaliava's not there anymore, but that's not a given, right? Now, would I pick Georgia? I'd probably pick Georgia.
I mean, but you're playing in Neyland Stadium.
Yeah, you're playing Neyland. That's not a given, right?
If you stand in on the field at Neyland and look up, it is massive.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard. I've never been, but I want to go.
My brother was at the Tennessee. My brother was working the Tennessee-Alabama game when they won on that field goal. and he was on the field, and he made friends with one of the security guards, and he goes, Joe, if they make this kick, you run.
Yeah.
They made the kick, and he even got hit, and he's like, Joe, just get the hell out of here. This shit is going to get wild.
Yeah, I've seen when they rush the field. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
So they hit the field goal. My brother just booked, and someone got nailed him, and he just kept on going, like threw his shoulder down and just kept on going because he was a football player. But like the place is shaking, and you're looking up, and it's 102,000 people, and you feel like you're below the ground.
Yeah, I've always heard that it's definitely on the list of stadiums that I want to visit. Whether it's definitely in any sport.
With no Nico, even though Nico's not there, still you're playing
in
Nico Stadium.
That's what I mean, right? So again, you start with September 13th at Tennessee, right? Going to be tough. September 27th, home versus Bama, right? Going to be tough. October 11th at Auburn, right? That's going to be tough. October 18th, home versus Ole Miss. You got to figure that's going to be a tough game. November 1st versus Florida, right? Florida's expected to be, better than they were last year, right? Another year of DJ Lagway, a really talented team. That won't be easy. November 15th versus Texas. That's going to be hard, even though it's in Athens. Again, tough game versus Texas. And then you can't overlook, and I know, they call them nerds and the whole deal. Listen, you can't overlook November 28th at Georgia Tech.
No,
you can't. You can't overlook that game. Look at what happened last year. It took 8 overtimes. And granted, if those Georgia wide receivers could catch a cold, more than likely that wouldn't have happened. But but it did. But it took 8 overtimes to beat Georgia Tech last year. Now you get another year of experience for Brent Key, another year of experience for Haynes King. A solid team, right? Good at running back, good at receiver. Now you have to go to their place and play that game, right?
So, in my opinion, and this is kind of like half true, what Georgia Tech did last year is what Georgia wants to do on offense. Is we're going to jam it down your throat, make a couple throws here, and Georgia Tech did that. And I mean, it's going to be in Atlanta. You can't overlook that game. No, Georgia Tech it's not the Georgia Tech of 4 or 5 years ago or before. They're a competitive team. Brett Key's got that team rolling.
Yeah, no, they're going to play good defense. They're disciplined, right? I mean, they're going to run the ball, with Haynes King, and again, I think it's a team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. They lost their number one receiver, who ended up being the number one receiver in the portal, who ended up at Auburn, Eric Singleton. But I think aside from that, man, you bring back most of your offensive players. You bring back a good defense. You added some pieces in the portal. So again, I think that game, with it being a rivalry and everything, and with that not being the only rivalry, right? You look at the very next, very obvious, question mark, as obvious as really as a schedule, and that's Gunnar Stockton.
The biggest position, the most important position, is a quarterback spot, and I'm with you. Yes, he's a 5-star for a reason. He could have a breakout year. He was a 5-star recruit. He came in, but just like we brought up with Carson Beck, couldn't beat out the walk-on who went back to JC, who came back, and Stenson Bennett. What's the reason that Stockton couldn't beat out Beck?
Yeah, if you're looking at it and you're looking at just recruiting profiles, right? And you're not taking film, you're not taking any of those into consideration, right? Anybody who doesn't follow the Georgia Bulldogs says, well, Gunnar Stockton is the better quarterback. I have a hard time seeing that, right? When you look at where Gunnar Stockton played, right? Gunnar Stockton is from the state of Georgia, played in North Georgia, played 2A football at Raven County High, right? Broke all kind of records to guys named Justin Fields, records, that belong to guys like named Trevor Lawrence, right? Throwing, passing records, rushing records, right? This kid was a 5-star, like you mentioned, super highly recruited kid, right? Had offers, from big schools, had offers from Bama, had offers from LSU, Ohio State, Florida, Auburn, South Carolina, Oregon. He had offers from all over the place, right? I mean, this kid he started from the time he was a freshman at Raven County, and like I said, just broke all kind of records. led his team to, deep into the playoffs and everything like that. Committed to South Carolina, decommitted, landed at Georgia. But since he got to Georgia, he hasn't really done anything, right? And then you ask, well, why hasn't he done anything? Well, because he was sitting behind Carson Beck, right? 2-time SEC champion Carson Beck, right? A guy who before last year was projected to be possibly the number one pick in the draft, right? And a guy who, has, won huge games, right? A guy who has 3 losses to his credit in his career. 2 of them are at Alabama, right? And so it really does kind of, I'm entertained by the detractors of Carson Beck, right? And it's like, essentially Carson Beck was the issue, was the only issue last year. And when you really look at it, very far from being the case.
I think we're both on the same wavelength on Carson Beck last year. That yes, he had a great junior season, his first season, but he had two of the best young wide receiving threats in the NFL with Bowers and
his sophomore. That was his sophomore season. His sophomore season, he had those. Yeah,
whatever redshirt, whatever it was.
Yeah, redshirt sophomore.
So yeah. So you lose that. You got to. You can't. That's at any school is hard to replace. You got probably the best tight end in all of NFL right now, and then Ladd McConkey. You see what he is. This guy's not. When you look at Ladd McConkey, you're like, oh, he's not physically imposing. He's not super athletic. He's just shifty. But you lose those two, okay, you're obviously going to get a little downturn. You lose a ton to the NFL on the offensive line. The running game's not the same. Who's the Pittsburgh guy? Who's the guy Pittsburgh took a couple of years ago?
What position?
Left tackle. I can't remember his name.
Ooh, I'd have to look that one up. Where did he play at?
He played at Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, left tackle?
Yeah, he got drafted 15th overall. I know this because this Bill Belichick's last year with the Patriots, the Jets were at 15. Patriots were at 14, didn't need a left tackle, and Bill Belichick took less to move back to screw the Jets. He took a first and a third, and the value was like a first. It was like insane value. He took first and a fifth. He could have got a third, just to screw the. It was classic Bill Belichick.
I got
you.
You're talking about 23?
Yeah.
Broderick Jones.
Yeah, Broderick. You lose a lot to the NFL this year, but I'm like, you're going to have a downturn. The running game was not the same last year, and that's what they've built their. I know Trevor Etienne coming in. They thought high hopes for him. He didn't really pan out as much as they had hoped. So I think we're both on the same way. You can't blame all on Carson Beck last year. And if you put up stats for stats, if you're a big stats guy, which I think they're, I'm not a huge stats guy, but I'm like, if you're putting the stats, he did have good stats. It was just, it wasn't all him. It was, he didn't have the running game. Defense couldn't hold it as much. Now, I'm with you on this year. I think it goes straight to Gunnar Stockton and why, yes, highly recruited, but it's also, if he's so highly recruited, why wasn't he starting? But it also kind of goes back to, and I kind of see this as Arch, too. I'm like, yes, he was dominating high school football, but what level of high school football was he dominating? It was a lower level, not top.
Yeah, it was 2A. Yeah, it was 2A ball. Which 2A ball in any state is not going to be great. Let's call it what it is, right?
Just like Arch Manning, he was the lower. He was dominating, but was he playing top tier in Louisiana? No, he wasn't playing week in week out. So I think he's going to be the biggest question mark for Georgia, and I think.
Yeah, listen, you could make an argument. You can make an argument that he is the biggest question mark at Georgia, right? You can also make an argument that the pieces around him are are maybe just as big a question, right? Because when you look at last year and what Carson Beck played behind, the majority of the year, you're looking at the fact that Carson Beck played behind an offensive line that had 3 guys drafted. They had 3 guys drafted. They had a second rounder and 2 third rounders, right? And they were still terrible. They still couldn't run the damn ball. They had 3 offensive linemen drafted in total in the top 3 rounds, and they couldn't run the ball and they couldn't protect them, right? So think about who he was handing the ball off to him. These guys are all highly recruited kids, right? Even, Trevor Etienne, who wasn't there, the year before, right? A highly recruited kid, right? That came over from Florida. The wide receivers, again, couldn't catch a cold. And so when you look at bashing Carson Beck for his performance last year, I think there's a lot that goes into that, right? I think, a guy like Mike Bobo really has to be called into question at this point. And you really have to wonder, is he the answer for this team long term, right? He's under contract till 2026. But you really have to question, okay, is this guy the answer? He's a guy who's not popular in the fan base. He's popular to hate on, to talk trash about, but he's not somebody that the fan base wants. A guy like Stacy Searle is that offensive line, the offensive line coach.
5 Sports is in. Mike Bobo sucks right off the bat.
Yeah. Hey, listen, end of the day, that's their problem, right? But again, had a good year, in 22 and I'm sorry, in 23, but definitely regressed, last year. Coach play calling came, under question, and the O-line coach Stacey Searles came under fire, based on their performance. Again, when you look at having 3 NFL guys, that got drafted on that line, and you still, were 102nd, I believe, in rushing yards, in the country, right? In an offense that that they want to run the ball in. That's an offense that wants to run the ball, right? They were 95th, I think, in yards per carry, right? So all that you have to call into question.
If we're going on last year, their leading rusher was a true freshman.
And Nate Frazier, right? 5-star kid.
Frazier from Mater Dei High School, actually from Compton, California. My roots go back to Compton because I played baseball at Jackie Robinson Stadium in Compton since 8th grade, and I went to Compton College, being like, one of 20 white people on campus.
I bet. Yeah.
Funny story about first day I'm on campus, right? We played this team. It was called the Seabats, who played it was my coach's his best friend, his team. He ran like a nonprofit, and they had this guy, we called him Big Mike, and he was Big Mike. He was like 6'6", 340 pounds.
Damn.
I'm walking on campus. I got like my hat on, my backpack. I got jack shit. I might have like $5 in my wallet, no credit, no cards or anything at that time. I'm an 18-year-old kid. See this big guy, he's facing that way. 2 guys start tearing me down. They start coming at me. He turns around and goes, "Rusty," gives me a big old hug. He's like, "What's up, man?" They come over, they dab me up like, "Are you cool?" I'm like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mike."
This means a lot. But
it was, your leading rusher on that team was a true freshman.
Yep.
You have question marks with their wide receiver core going from last year. Yes, you get a big transfer with Branch, was it Zachariah Branch from USC.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been a kind of a question. He's been a question mark at USC too ever since that massive first game.
There's no guarantee there. And he was a guy who was really in demand when he hit the portal. But I think he was in demand based on his 5-star status. When he arrived at USC, I don't think there was a production type of pursuit. I think it was more a potential type of pursuit. What can this kid turn into? But he had a good freshman year, had a mediocre sophomore year, right? And so again, I think with this kid, when you lose transfers, you bring in transfers. To me, it's one of 2 things, right? It's either production or potential, right? And with Zachariah Branch at this point in his career, it's very much potential and what he might turn into.
If you're looking what might he turn, if you're going off what his freshman year, his first couple games, it was
electric. Yeah, electric, 100%.
Those first couple where he had the massive kick returns, all the athleticism coming up, but ever since that, it slowly started going downhill. But the potential is there because of that unbelievable
100%.
athleticism
Yeah.
he has.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
also, you lose 36 guys total, either to the draft or the transfer portal. And we're talking a lot of offense, but also talking what they lost on the defensive side to losing guys to the draft, not just this year, but from years past. I mean, you lose Jalen Walker, you lose Malachi Starks, who Starks and Walker were, not just leaders on that defense, leaders in the clubhouse.
mm-hmm.
Or in the,
Yeah, you lose. Listen, the Georgia losing talent every year is it's just a normal thing, right? They're one of the programs that reload, they don't rebuild. Every year they have a ton of guys drafted, and that's one of uh, the allures of the University of Georgia, right? Not only do they win consistently, right, but if you commit to Georgia, if you commit to play football at Georgia, you stand a really good chance of being an NFL prospect, getting drafted high, making a team, right? And so there again, it's what they do. It's what Kirby Smart has done since the time he took over is recruit his ass off. Like we talked about his recruiting classes. And it's not only that they recruit, right? They recruit and they develop, right? And so when you look at that and that being the case for this program, it's even more surprising that they had a performance like they did last year. That's why I call the coaching into question, right? Because when you have that amount of guys on one unit that get drafted, right, you wonder, okay, well, why weren't they better, right? When they recruit the way they do, again, and they lately, I guess they just haven't hit on some of these guys on the offensive side of the ball. They've transferred or what have you, but very surprising that they did what they did, right? And now you add to that, right? Going back to what we were talking about, right? Why might they struggle, right? And when you look at that schedule and where they're going, right now you have to navigate this schedule with a guy like Carson Beck, or I'm sorry, a guy like Gunnar Stockton, who really hasn't played, right? And he started last year. He started the quarterfinal game, right? I mean, after Carson Beck gets hurt in the whole deal, right? He gets hurt in the SEC title game. They win that game, but he starts against Notre Dame. But you look at it and you say, well, okay, what does this look like now with an offseason where you're getting all the number one reps, right? What does this look like now, with him starting? And listen, you can bet on intangibles all you want. And if you hear the Georgia people talk, they're like, he's this, he's that, he's a great leader, he's just a regular guy. He's, I think some of that is a shot at Carson Beck a little bit, but they seem to love him, right? And that's fine and that's cool. But what's going to matter is what happens when he steps between those lines, right? And that remains to be seen. And now you're a first-time starter, right? And granted, this is going to be your fourth year in college football. So the fact that you've been there for a while will help you, but you've never gone to any of these stadiums, to play a game, right? And now you're playing. Not only do you play a tough schedule, but you're playing by and large, the best collection of coaches in the country, right? You don't have Ryan Day, Dabo, that kind of thing, but as a conference, the SEC hands down has the best collection of coaches in the country.
I mean, yeah, you played in that in the Notre Dame game, but I'm sorry, like as packed as it was, it's going to be nothing compared to the environment you go when you play on September 13th when you go to Knoxville and play at Neyland Stadium. 100%. And talking about a good coach, Heupel is a great coach.
Yep.
And that's yes, the environment's going to be nothing like you're ever going to see in your life. Raucous.
Yeah. The venues are top notch, right, and just wild, right. The coaches are top notch. I mean, you're going to have to bring it every single week, and this is a job that, again, by and large, has been handed. The job was handed to him, right. And some can say, well, he earned it or whatever the case may be. But the fact of the matter is there was no competition. There's no competition leading now into camp. Like the job is his, right? So it's not even the fact that he's when he played last year, it was via injury. And now this year, the keys were handed to him. And he's like, all right, man, it's your team. And again, I go back to, listen, intangibles are great. Intangibles are great. Don't get me wrong, right? You want somebody who's well-liked. You want somebody, who is, smart, steady, not too high, not too low. He seems to be all those. That's what it looks like to me from, on the outside looking in. That's great. But anybody who tells me that they are 100% sure that he is the guy and he is going to be better than Carson Beck, I don't know what we're basing that on other than a dislike for Carson Beck and a strong belief in Kirby Smart and I guess the way he recruits. Because again, if it were me and I were a Georgia fan, the questions remain. What is Mike Bobo going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to put him in a position to win? Is Stacey Searles going to be able to coach up this offensive line and build us a running game that is going to make it so that this transition for Gunnar Stockton as a first-time starter is an easy one? Those things are all questions to me, and I don't think we're going to have an answer to them until they go to Neyland Stadium on September 13th.
I think I'm with you. I think, if you're looking at the roster, I don't think you got redshirt freshmen and freshmen. That's not if you've noticed anything about Kirby Smart's tenure in Georgia, he's not a big guy throwing these young guys in. He likes experienced quarterback with Carson Beck, who was in the program for 3 years, with Stetson Bennett. It's gonna and if you're going on, if you're going on upside, this is the guy who likes manage the game, run the ball, make a big throw here and there. That's going to come down to what if you can do that, Georgia be successful. Hey, you manage the game. We have a good running game. We control the ball. You have to make 3 or 4 big throws, and that's how we're going to win. And that's how I view how Kirby Smart wants his team to be. If you're looking. It is at his tenure in Georgia. Run the ball, we dominate the clock, we let our defense talk, and then we need 3 or 4 good throws from you that really help us out. But manage, be a good man. Because if you're looking at it, Stetson Bennett, when they were winning, was a great game manager. He did
exactly.
And Carson Beck, when they were winning, he was a great game manager. Now he could be better than Stetson Bennett. I think it was just. And it also could have been the talent that he had on the outside made him look very good too. But that's in my view, that's what looks like what Kirby wants. He was like, hey, we're going to run the ball. Our defense is going to talk. He's a defensive guy, obviously, and 3 or 4 times we're going to lean on you. I think the running game could be better just because Gunnar Stockton's got better legs, but you're throwing a guy. The SEC is a whole different level. This is a whole different ball game than anything he's ever going to go with.
Listen, they're 2 different quarterbacks, right? And there's a reason why Carson Beck was regarded the way he was regarded before the start of last year, right? When you start with measurables, right? This is Carson Beck again. This kid is 6'4", 220 pounds. Right. So when you talk about prototypical size as it relates to the NFL, Carson Beck has it. When you talk about his arm, right? Not only does he have a strong arm, he throws with touch, he throws with accuracy. He's a guy who can layer the ball, right? He's not just a one-trick pony when it comes to his arm. He can throw the deep ball, he can throw with touch, he can throw with power, he can throw into tight windows, right? And then you add to that he can scramble. Right, he's not a statue.
No,
right?
Not. I was like he's got some legs.
Yeah. No, exactly. No, I'm just stating the obvious, right? And so
comparing his legs to Stockton, Stockton's definitely the better runner.
Exactly.
He moves.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's what I mean. Right, the guy's an athlete, right?
You get out of the pocket for sure.
Yeah, let's not forget that he's an athlete and more than just. Objective assessment, right? This is a kid who was committed to the University of Florida to play baseball.
Yeah.
Right. So he he is, when you look at he played third base, right? So not necessarily, and again, this better than me, right? Third baseman, not typically your speedsters, right? These are typically guys who are big, strong guys, hit for power, that kind of thing, right? So he's a big, strong guy, right? He's not when he's like he didn't play center field, right? He wasn't a second baseman, right? He's a third baseman. Right, he had size. The guy hit for power. So again, he can move. He's not a statue, right? This is a guy when he breaks the pocket. He may not be Gunnar Stockton with his legs, and granted, he's not Lamar Jackson or anything. But this is a guy who can get out of the pocket and pick up a first down. This is a guy who doesn't shy away from contact. He's not one of these guys who, oh man, I better slide. He probably should slide, but he's a guy who doesn't mind lowering his shoulder and taking on contact, right? So to say that Gunnar Stockton is now, like you mentioned, is Gunnar Stockton a better runner? 100%. There's no debating that, right? Gunnar Stockton. So for anybody who's going to bring that up at some point and oh, what are you talking about? No, I know this. I recognize this. There's no comparison there when you're talking about who is better, on the run, right? Who uses their legs better. But that is to say that Carson Beck is no slouch when it comes to being able to break the pocket and pick up a first down, right?
I think we both can agree it's going to come down to what Gunnar Stockton. It's going to be Gunnar Stockton. You're going to win or lose with the guy.
Yeah, and
on that we got I on Hard Rock and probably most places over under 9.5 wins.
Man, listen, like I said at the start of the show, this is the first year in a long time that I would have. Listen, they're good for 10 wins every year. We know this. This is the first time in a long time that I could, if it were my money that I were putting down, and I know this may be blasphemous to people, and I guess you know what I'm going to say, but I would take the under on that 9.5 this year.
I'm going.
You're going.
It's going to come down. I'm going to say Georgia Tech game's going to come down to get an over or under, in my opinion. That last game in Atlanta is going to be the over under.
Listen, man.
Also, I wouldn't sleep, like you said, wouldn't sleep on Auburn. I think they're going to get better.
Dude, even before that Georgia Tech game, listen, man, there are a lot of trip hazards before that game. Again, man, that's why I wrote down, listen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games that if you told me, again, I'm not predicting they're going to lose 6 games. What I'm saying is they're going to be in dogfights in these games.
And then I'm also and this might be my Georgia being like, hey, this SEC. They go to play Kentucky every year. I'm like, pencil that in for an easy W. Well, Georgia plays Kentucky terribly every time
for some reason. Yeah.
For some reason, it's like, hey, we squeak out a win by a field goal every time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, every time I go in, I'm like, oh, I'll take Georgia to cover easily, and then it's like, damn, I missed a parlay because of Georgia again. Yep. Like, why do I keep on doing this to myself? But I think that over-under is going to be – I don't think I'd bet on it. I don't really like to bet over-under because I'm going to have to put money and weight on a win total. But I think it's going to be close. And obviously, I don't want to give off any hands because I know we probably want to do some predictions when we get closer into the season. Because we're right around this summer's flying quick. We're right here. We're almost a little over a month from the first game of football. I know you're going to be out there at Hard Rock Stadium when they play Notre Dame. Then we got LSU Clemson the day before. So, I mean, I'm probably not moving off the couch on that day. Just make sure I got my cooler right there, Oh,
yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'll be down in Miami. I'll get down to the 29th. I already talked to my brother for that football day on the 30th. We're going to be by the pool, TV on, grilling. I told him, I said, I'm not moving. I am not moving from your house that Saturday. Whatever we got to do, we're going to do it Friday because Saturday I will be out of commission watching football. And then Sunday, heading over to Hard Rock early on to tailgate and do all that, man. So that weekend is going to be –
that's the only game on the slate.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. And it'll be a 7:30 kick. So by the time that game – by the time 7:30 comes around, I may be, 2 sheets, possibly 3 sheets to the win when that one comes around. So we'll see how that goes. And but it's going to be a fun weekend, man. August 30th can't get here fast enough, man. Where I think everybody's ready. We're sick of talking. We like talking recruiting. Don't get me wrong. We like talking about. Yeah, we like talking about. Some of these kind of, different angles and different views on some of these teams. But I think I speak for everybody when I say football can't get here fast enough.
I mean, I love baseball, but I'm a sports nut.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Listen, this I think this is going to conclude the episode. This is this is part one of a 5-part series that we got coming up for you guys. We won't reveal who next week's team is that we're going to discuss, but we'll put that out next week. So make sure you go ahead and tune in, and we'll have some more good material for you guys. Until that time, man. Go ahead and subscribe to all the channels here on FTSNX with my boy Bobby. We got a lot of good programming, a lot of good material with so many talented people, great people on this channel and on FTSN. So do us a huge favor, like and subscribe. Stay tuned for next week's episode. And until then, I am Q.
I'm Russ.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Y'all take care.